you can hear me, you'll see a little chat box in the left-hand corner of your screen. Feel free to type away in there. Fantastic. My apologies if I come across a bit too loud and clear, but as you can see, I'm wearing this little microphone and I always forget how close to my mouth it is. So, just a really quick introduction for those of you who don't know me. Hello, I've put the screen on today just so I can properly introduce myself. I'm Sophie, I'm the Education Manager at Igennus and one of the nutrition scientists behind all of the crazy and wonderful things that we do here. That's it, really. I'm going to be talking to you today about brain boosting bioactive. So, without further ado, as long as you can all hear me, I shall make a start. So, today's webinar, it's really, the title of today's webinar is a little bit of a trick question, I have to be honest. I wanted to sort of say, oh, you know, this is a really, as I like to call it, sexy, exciting area of nutrition science. And it truly is. Brain health is hot on everybody's agenda at the moment. There's so much going on in the world of brain health that it's really, really an exciting area. But when it comes specifically to what really works in terms of brain nutrition, protecting, preserving, helping mental health and cognitive function, brain boosting bioactives can be a little bit, as I say, a trick question. And hopefully today's webinar will show you why. This webinar is really meant to be sort of a whirlwind overview of the current research, what's going on in the world of brain health, why certain studies are not so helpful, why we get mixed messages, and to really help you to understand why Igennus felt the need to produce the lovely MindCare range, what's in the MindCare range, why we chose the ingredients that we chose, and how they might be helpful. So for those of you that haven't used the Click Webinar software before, just to let you know, if you do have any problems with sound or anything freezes, it's best to sort of close down your browser, click on the link in your website again, where in your email again, and come back in, and then you should reconnect. My apologies if there are any technical issues at your end. It's best to make sure that all windows and everything are closed down, that you've only got the Click Webinar software open. We did have a few internet connection issues this morning when I was getting set up at our end, so do please bear with me if anything kicks out. If for any reason it all goes horribly wrong and crashes, I'll record the whole thing as if it were a live event and you'll all get sent that later on in the week. Questions, I am on my own today. I don't have any technical support, so if you could hold off until the end for those, and if there is anything pressing, I'll try and sort of jump in at some point down the line. So yes, I do apologize if anybody does have any sound issues or concerns. I'm actually going to turn the video off for the duration of the talk because it gets a little bit distracting when you sort of see my face bobbing around. I'm a hands person, so I'll be doing this throughout the talk, which is also very distracting. So yes, if there are any issues, do please log out, log back in again, and hopefully it'll all go okay. So I'm going to turn off the video. Okay, so brain boosting bioactives, as I say, this world of mental health, cognitive performance, mood related nutrition is really, really, really quite exciting. And what I want to do today is sort of give you a, as I say, a whirlwind through the thinking, the research that went behind the Igennus MindCare range, why we chose the ingredients that we chose, and why it's really, really important to be kind of aware of where brain nutrition and brain research is at the moment in order to make educated judgments of how to sort of support brains with your clients. So what's going on in brain health? And excuse the title of this slide, it seems a bit crass, but you know what I mean. Why is brain health hot right now? Why is it? It's high on the government agenda, it's high in the research, it's the subject of all of the sort of CAM literature and conferences and things that are going on at the moment. And when you look at these statistics, it's really unsurprising. Mental health issues are through the roof. The number of GP visits and lost working days associated with stress-related illness are also through the roof. And a ridiculous number of our over 65s and even more so of our over 80s have already been diagnosed with dementia. If you look at the statistics on the Dementia Society website, what you'll actually find is that I think less than 50% of people with dementia actually ever get diagnosed. So this is more like 14% and 40%. And it's not going to get any better. And unsurprisingly, with these crazy statistics, this is costing our government, it's costing our NHS, it's costing our social bills significantly. So finally, it's really, really high on the agenda and something needs to be done. So when we talk about brain health, mental health, cognitive health, when we talk about brain boosting bioactives, we tend to break it down into these 4 key areas. And these key areas are obviously the areas that the majority of the Western world are coping with, dealing with, trying desperately not to develop full-blown conditions associated with these areas. Stress, as I say, a huge number of people seeing GPs as a result of stress-induced illness. Over a quarter of adults in the UK actually take sick leave directly related to stress, and a whopping 10% have panic attacks, which is quite scary. Depression, we know, affects about 1 in 4 of us at any point in time. And as I mentioned, the dementia statistics, already very high, are set to increase by around 40% over the next 10 to 12 years. So it really is a significant problem and something needs to be done about it. So at Igennus, we wanted to bring our long-term expertise as lipid fatty acid specialists. We wanted to bring our knowledge of the role of nutrition in cognitive performance, mental health, and make sure that basically we were doing the absolute best we could in terms of providing products that reached out to people that truly needed them. So what we did was we sort of went off, we did a bit of research. We said, well, what are these key areas that people are struggling with? What are the main areas of cognitive and mental health concern? Let's create something that really does work for these people. Now, the MindCare range is very much designed as an optimal well-being support. So it's meant to be sort of preclinical nutrition. It's much designed for this sort of mass consumer. It was designed with kind of supermarket and Boots shelves in mind. For those people who haven't quite reached a point where they're thinking, oh, I need some significant help here, but I'm starting to struggle. So we wanted to bring them a premium and highly effective product that could actually bring someone back from the brink of full-blown mental health and cognitive issues. But what research is there? I mean, I've said that brain boosting bioactives, what really works is a bit of can't speak today, excuse me, a bit of a trick question. But what I want to do is just really quickly sort of run through the evidence for what really does work and how we decided what to put in MindCare. So something we need to be aware of, and sort of the basis of this talk, is what's going on in the world of brain nutrition and brain research, and why is so much mixed and varied. I mean, I'm sure you're all well aware of the fact there was a study published only last week, I think it was, that basically looked at a group of 65 plus patients, gave them fish oil for 5 years, and determined that fish oils didn't help to slow cognitive decline. Well, the reasons why we get studies like this, yes, be it very, very frustrating, actually do help us to unpick some of the reasons why things aren't working. They actually help us to understand what not to do in terms of brain nutrition and where to go next. Brain research is really in its infancy in terms of finding out what really is effective in these different areas, and particularly with cognitive function. Whilst loads of research has been ongoing, there's still a lot of questions out there that we don't know the answers to, and a lot of the research that's happening at the moment is helping us to unpick how to create a good brain focused study. So many things that studies just aren't able to correctly determine before they're even designed at the moment are things like, what is the optimal length of intervention? We don't actually know if giving somebody who is already in their sort of 65 plus ages, in their later stages of life, whether or not giving them an intervention is going to be beneficial. Do you need to give it to them for 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, 20 years? Should we have been giving it to people since they were 30? Should the intervention be a lifetime intervention? Are we choosing the right population? If you're using study participants who aren't at risk of cognitive decline, aren't at risk of mental health, have relatively healthy, active brains anyway, who tend to be in the top section in terms of brain performance, then looking at cognitive decline in these people isn't necessarily going to be helpful to us. We don't know what the ideal dose of these individual nutrients is. We don't know whether or not each individual needs an individual dose. Well, we do know that, in fact, which we'll explain later in this presentation. But obviously, if you're giving exactly the same dose to every single participant, there's going to be a huge variation in response depending on their unique needs. We don't know what else is going on. I mean, I know these studies are very well designed, they're very well controlled, and they test for variations that could be impacting study outcomes in terms of tests. But we all know that even just one night of poor sleep or a stressful event on the way to the study testing day could be significantly impacting how our brains actually perform. Maybe you ate something last night that didn't agree with you and it's giving you neurological symptoms that you don't even know exist. So there's so many different factors at play here in terms of actually making sure that a brain study is not only a good study, but provides us with good outcomes. So we really need to shift our thinking in terms of psychological and cognitive performance, nutrition, intervention, and start thinking about a bigger picture, the different pieces of the puzzle, rather than just here's a nutrient, let's give it to everybody and pray that there's benefit. So should we be using single nutrients? Probably not. We should be looking at comprehensive blends that support the brain as a whole. And this is really what MindCare is about. This is about looking at the research that supports all of the different nutrients involved in the mental health and cognitive performance, giving the best quality, most bioavailable forms of those nutrients that we know to be essential for brain and central nervous function, and then sneaking in a few of those sort of more new, innovative, sexy nutrients that are coming out where the research is getting stronger and stronger. So, obviously, being a lipid specialist company, we're going to talk first about omega-3s, and we know that omega-3s are absolutely vital for brain function. When we look at this slide here, we can see that this is a breakdown of the structure of the brain in terms of its fats, predominantly saturated fats and DHA, and then the other major player is arachidonic acid. Those are really the three key ingredients in terms of fat in our brain. The other fats, the other omega-3s, the other omega-6s, whilst present to some extent, make up very little of the total weight of the brain. So it goes without saying that any nutritional intervention to support the brain is obviously going to be quite reliant on good quality fats that provide the right composition for the brain tissue itself. DHA, we know it's really fundamental to brain structure, and it's one of the few nutrients that we actually have a really strong EFSA claim that can be used here. But one of the really interesting things about DHA is that EFSA are very clear on the fact that 250 milligrams per day of DHA is perfectly adequate to support total body DHA needs. So this isn't just looking at the brain. In order to make sure that you get the benefits associated with any individual nutrient, you need to think about the whole body. So 250 milligrams really is enough to support our brain as well as our whole body. And we know that DHA does a lot of very vital things. As I said, it's a dominant polyunsaturated fatty acid in the brain. It's vital for the structure of every single cell within the brain and the central nervous system. Without adequate DHA levels, our cells would be too rigid and toxins wouldn't be able to get out, which would be very bad news for the brain, increases oxidative stress and damage. And we don't get oxygen in, we aren't able to effectively utilize our transmembrane proteins. We can't produce energy, we can't transmit messages, and everything just goes a little bit horribly wrong. But something that's massively, massively up until relatively recently been overlooked in the brain is actually the vital importance of EPA. Whilst we know that DHA is fundamental to structure, because EPA features so little in the structure of the brain, most research has sort of brushed it off and said, well, there's hardly any EPA in the brain. Why do we even need to worry about it? But when you drill down into the functions of EPA, it becomes very apparent that if you don't also look after your EPA levels, that the brain is going to suffer significantly. One of the direct actions of EPA is actually almost as a bodyguard for DHA in the brain. The level of EPA that we have available in our system and circulating in our blood and within our red blood cells actually interacts with the very enzyme that cleaves and releases DHA from those structural cell membranes. So if you have low EPA status, your body is going to be cleaving and releasing and using up DHA at a much, much faster rate. So it makes absolute sense to make sure that your EPA is optimized as well as your DHA to protect and nourish brain structure and function and central nervous system and neuron structure throughout life, and particularly as we age. We know that as we age, oxidative stress increases. We know that inflammatory load goes up with stress, anxiety, toxic lifestyles, increased aging. And so the direct interaction with arachidonic acid by EPA to reduce the inflammatory load is again of vital importance in protecting our brain structure and function. Interestingly enough, when we actually drill down into kind of EPA versus DHA within the brain, studies that do show enhanced focus, attention, and cognitive processing tend to dose much higher EPA than DHA. So if you want those cognitive enhancements rather than just protection, then EPA seems to be the main kind of ingredient getting involved there. And one other really important thing that EPA does is it's actually used for beta oxidation in the brain. So EPA is actually used in preference, again, to help protect DHA and preserve brain structure for a rapid and easy usable source of energy for mitochondrial fuel. So it's a really, really important nutrient in the brain, despite not being able to find very much of it when you're looking around in the structural components. Now, when it comes to specifically mental health and things like stress, anxiety, depression, there's been a wealth of research, which I'll talk a little bit about more in a moment, specifically showing that mood benefits and HPA benefits are linked to significant levels of EPA. So again, if we're focusing on DHA, if we become so obsessed with the idea that DHA is in the brain, it has to be the one that's supporting brain and will therefore boost brain, then we're going to miss out on all of these wonderful anti-inflammatory, anti-anxiety, anti-depressive support mechanisms that EPA provides. And the references here are sort of more historical references, but if you read through any of those, you'll see that together they create a very comprehensive picture of the vital importance of EPA in interacting with the stress response and preventing dysregulation of the HPA axis. And Dr. Bailey is going to be talking all about this in her October webinar, where she'll be looking into the HPA axis, stress, depression related disorders, and nutritional therapy specifically for those areas. Another thing, just to really sort of hammer this message home that we mustn't forget about EPA when it comes to our brains, is this really interesting study, and this has been replicated by other groups since. But in 2014, this was a study carried out in a group of healthy young males. So there was absolutely nothing wrong with them. They had no cognitive issues, no mental health concerns, and they were given nearly 2 grams of total omega-3, of which over 1,000 milligrams was EPA and 600 milligrams was DHA. So you're definitely hitting the required 250 milligrams there, but you're getting double the EPA versus DHA. Now, they gave this supplement to these young lads for a 3-month period, and you can see very nicely that in both the EPA and the DHA, the percentage within the red blood cell goes up significantly. The interesting thing, first of all, here is that actually at the 8-week mark, despite still giving DHA, the DHA levels plateau, so they're not going up anymore, even though they're still getting more DHA. EPA continues to rise at the 12-week mark. Another interesting thing is, despite the fact you're getting twice the amount of EPA than you are DHA, the increase percentage-wise in the availability of both EPA and DHA is around about the same. So it both goes up by sort of 1.5 to 2%, despite double the EPA being consumed. Finally, and perhaps most fascinating and most important, in my opinion, in terms of the sort of EPA versus DHA ongoing debate, is that after just 2 weeks of ceasing the supplement, EPA levels within the red blood cell have dropped right down by less than half than where they reached. And within 8 weeks of ceasing supplementation, they are right back down to where they started. DHA, on the other hand, within that 8-week period, has only dropped very, very fractionally by sort of less than 0.5% in the red blood cell. So you can see that EPA, there's something going on here. It's clearly being used up at a much, much greater rate. And studies have gone on to sort of determine the rate at which DHA and EPA turn over. And we know that the DHA turnover is actually really, really low. So the brain, when it has optimal EPA levels, will actively protect and preserve DHA and use EPA for all of these vital functions that we know EPA is responsible for, to allow those structural components to remain happy and healthy and keep the brain and central nervous system communicating and functioning. But we do need to make sure, so if we're using omega-3s as part of a brain intervention, as part of clinical nutrition for mental health, cognitive health, we need to actually make sure that the fish oil that we're choosing really actually gets into the cell, gets into the brain, gets into the central nervous system. And there's a few things that we need to consider here, and I just want to sort of whiz through these really quickly because I've written about it a million times in various other articles and documents and things. But first and foremost, you need to obviously get the right dose. So this can be tested now. You can do a fatty acid profiling service with a blood spot. That will give your client the exact dose that they need. Everybody needs a different dose according to their baseline omega-3 levels and the amount of omega-3 they consume. But if you're not giving the right dose to somebody, then the chances are they'll never see the full benefits associated with omega-3 use. Once you've determined that dose, which more often than not is between sort of 1 and 3 grams for most individuals, you need to actually make sure that the omega-3 within the oil that you've chosen can get to where it needs to go. So this study was actually carried out using a really, really high dose of both EPA and DHA, and they looked at different concentrations of oil. So a 62% oil is round about the concentration that most therapeutic practitioner-focused fish oils will concentrate their oil to. 85%, there's only a few of us on the market that go over 60%, and this tends to be your so there's Igennus, Minami, Nordic Naturals, a few other people that concentrate above 60%, 70%, 80%, even up to sort of 90, 95% is available. And what you can see here very clearly is, despite the fact these people are getting exactly the same total EPA plus DHA, the ability of the higher concentration oil to raise omega-3 levels was significantly greater. So you're getting over 100% increase from baseline omega-3 levels by using a higher concentration oil. And this seems to be down to a saturation effect. So as you can probably well imagine, whenever you eat fats, the same mechanisms, digestive enzymes, transport proteins, etc., are all involved in all of the different fats. So the more total volume of oil that you're taking, the more different fats that the body has to deal with, the less likely it is that the fats you're actually hoping are going to get into the cells ultimately get there, because there's all of this competition. So by concentrating oils as high as possible, what you actually do is reduce the competition for that digestion process and the absorption and the transport. Now, it's all very well and good saying, okay, great, so you concentrate in oil and we see that it raises your omega-3s levels from baseline, but does it actually make a difference? Does any kind of increase in omega-3 help in terms of health benefits? Well, no, it's a similar story. You need the higher concentration to actually elicit those health benefits. So this was a study, it's the same study. They then went on to not only look at the increase in omega-3 levels, but they went on to look at the health benefits associated. So they looked at triglyceride levels, and the difference in the ability for the different concentration oils to actually significantly reduce triglyceride levels was huge. So the higher concentration was able to reduce triglyceride levels by over fourfold that of the lower concentration oil. So the point I'm trying to make here, as I've probably already made, but just to re-clarify, is that you really, really, really need to be thinking about whether or not the supplement that you choose, and particularly with omegas, it's very, very important with omegas that you're actually getting an oil that's going to do what you hope it will do. If you give the right dose, if you give a high concentration, then you're giving your client the best possible opportunity to actually be able to see the health benefits quickly and effectively associated with the oil that you've chosen. I'm not going to go through this in too much depth, but basically this study just compared a concentrated triglyceride fish oil, a concentrated ethyl ester fish oil, an unconcentrated standard fish oil, and a krill oil, gave the manufacturer's recommended dose. So yes, of course, the concentrated oils give a much higher omega-3 dose in the first place, but the point I'm trying to make here is that compliance is a massive issue. If you want clients to take 2 grams of omega-3s, for example, are they more likely to take 4 small concentrated fish oils, or are they going to be happy to take 15 krill oil capsules? It's really, really, really vital that the dose plus the concentration plus actually taking the supplement that you choose is going to be happening. And just for peace of mind, re-esterified triglyceride, so this is a concentrated triglyceride form, actually is proven to be one of the most effective in terms of bioavailability. This study doesn't actually include phospholipid form, but more recent studies have, and triglyceride fish oil is as effective at raising omega-3 levels as the same dose of omega-3 from phospholipids. So it really is, in my opinion, a bit of a no-brainer. If you want a therapeutic fatty acid supplement in the terms of concentration, bioavailability, effectiveness, and cost, then you're really looking at a re-esterified triglyceride as your best option. So enough about omega-3s for now. You can find all of that information on our website, and you can read all about it when I send the slides around later on this week. B vitamins. B vitamins are another really, really, really important area when it comes to the brain, but not without its own troubles. We all know there's been quite a few studies that have been published this year that have basically said, it's a waste of money, don't bother. B vitamins are useless. They're not going to slow your brain aging. They're not going to boost brain performance. But again, we know that B vitamins are absolutely vital to energy metabolism. The mitochondria is so important in the brain. If anything brain is going on, we need to be thinking about the mitochondria, because the mitochondria are in absolute overdrive when it comes to supporting brain. 20% of our total energy requirements are used by the brain. So think about those little mitochondria sort of in absolute overdrive. So B vitamins are really important. They're also really fundamental to the direct synthesis of our neurotransmitters, and we know that antioxidants are vital in the brain to protect against high levels of oxidative stress and potential toxins that get built up in the brain. So by supporting our B vitamin levels, by supporting our energy metabolism, our neurotransmitter synthesis, and our antioxidant status, the B vitamins do provide significant support for cognition, relaxation, sleep, mental focus and attention, and of course protecting against the sort of damaging inflammatory and oxidative stress effects of modern life. Of course, we cannot talk about B vitamins without talking about homocysteine. This is an area that not only has a huge wealth of research when it comes to brain health specifically, but again, there's a lot of kind of conflicting results and evidence, but absolutely 100% B vitamins involvement in homocysteine recycling cannot be denied. And when you look at all of the different mechanisms that homocysteine relates to, all of the biological functions, we start to see why in the brain and the central nervous system in particular, this homocysteine and methylation cycle becomes of vital importance. Everything from S-adenylyl methionine production, which of course goes on to support the metabolism of the neurotransmitters involved in happiness, sleep, calm, focus, attention, detoxification, things involved in mitochondrial function directly and membrane health, as well as directly supporting nerve transmission and communication throughout the central nervous system through myelin proteins. So having adequate B vitamin levels ensures healthy homocysteine levels are supported, and you are protecting a lot of direct brain and central nervous system functions as a result. So we can't really talk about brain and central nervous system without just thinking about those other vitamins and minerals that are involved. And again, things that we tend to forget. I mean, what I'm trying to do here, and you're probably all sitting there thinking, oh, but we know all of this. What I really want to highlight with this presentation and with the formulations MindCare is when it comes to nutrition intervention, when it comes to nutrition science, we get so sort of excited about new innovative ingredients. We're all obsessed with the latest kind of silver bullet, as it were, for cognitive performance or mental health. But if we don't look at the fundamentals, if we don't base our nutritional interventions on optimizing the very fundamental ingredients involved in those everyday processes, then we're never going to see the benefits that we would hope for with all of these sort of new, sexy, exciting nutrients. So it's really absolutely vital to make sure that the vitamins, minerals, and fatty acids involved in brain structure and everyday brain and central nervous system function are supported in order to see enhancements and extra benefits from the new shiny exciting ingredients that are being discovered. So of course vitamin C, we all know how important vitamin C is in terms of tiredness, fatigue, supporting cortisol levels, and of course in detoxification and free radical support. So very important to be thinking about vitamin C in the brain. Vitamin E is also really lovely as an antioxidant. Really high antioxidant pools are found in the brain, and vitamin C is stored most highly in the brain. So there's a lot of vitamin C in the brain. There's a lot of antioxidant, as you can probably well imagine. So it's something we definitely shouldn't be overlooking when we're looking to support our brains directly. Vitamin D, another wonderful nutrient directly known as a neurotropic, which is sort of a smart drug or a brain and central nervous system nourishing nutrient, and it's directly involved in central nervous system support, function, growth and development, synaptic plasticity. Calcium homeostasis is again probably something that we sort of forget or take for granted, but if you're not efficiently absorbing your calcium, then your nerves can't fire and you can't transmit messages. But vitamin D is also really important for preventing any protein buildup in the brain. It's directly involved in some of our detoxification, so really quite vital a nutrient to be considering. Minerals wise, zinc, selenium, and magnesium are the key ones to be thinking about alongside the antioxidants and B vitamins. Obviously, very, very heavily involved in our neurotransmitters, but also very heavily involved in antioxidant status as well as direct interaction with the receptors and transporters and ion channels that allow us to recognize, utilize, and respond to signals that are being transmitted around the body. This may seem a little out of place, but we can't really talk about brain without talking about immune function. And as we're all well aware, as soon as our brain and our central nervous system become stressed and overwhelmed, we tend to get sick. Stress is a massive, massive, massive precursor to all sorts of immune and disease issues. More often than not, when we're talking about things like cancer, cardiovascular disease, even just the common cold, people have had a period of severe stress leading up to the brain leading up to getting sick. So the brain is obviously massively involved in interacting with the immune function. And there was, I don't know if anybody saw it, but in Cam magazine last week, I think not last week, sorry, last month, there was a really lovely article showing that there's been new research into a direct link between the brain and the immune function. So there's actually blood vessels and circulatory systems that directly link our immune system to our brain. And it makes sense when we look at the nutrients required to support the brain and central nervous system on a day-to-day basis, just with its everyday functions, and we look at the immune system, it's the same nutrients working in overdrive. So as soon as one system is going, give me all of the nutrients, I need help, I'm working in overdrive, I've got a bug to attack, the other system is going to fall down. And we know there's this whole area of research called sickness behaviors, which is all about the mental and cognitive impacts that inflammatory cytokines have on our brain and mental performance. So we know that it's a huge area. So in supporting those nutrient levels that are required by the brain and central nervous system when it's in overdrive, hopefully we're protecting the immune system as well, and we're making sure that the immune system isn't going to take over and reduce our brain function and affect our mood. So drilling down then, I just want to take a few minutes on those 4 key areas that we discussed as being the major concerns for modern Western society in terms of brain and mental health, and the things that are really kind of stand out in terms of nutrients that can be used to support these areas. So firstly, we're going to take a look at stress and anxiety. As I said, Dr. Bailey is going to be looking at this area in much more detail in her October webinar, and we're going to be covering these 4 different areas of brain health across 4 webinars over the coming months. So do stay tuned. So stress and anxiety. This is just a little diagram that I drew up, and I'm sure you're all very familiar with this concept that when we're under chronic stress, this stimulates our HPA axis. We get more HPA axis stimulation because we're obviously stressed. This triggers excess cortisol production, it triggers high levels of inflammation, and it of course triggers oxidative stress, which can go on to damage our lipid membranes quite significantly. The combination of cortisol, inflammation, and oxidative stress has a profound detrimental impact on our neurotransmitter levels. It makes us feel anxious and depressed and feel as though we just can't cope because we don't have the availability of the neurotransmitters. We get tired, leading on to fatigue, and of course our immune system is ultimately suppressed, so we're getting more and more bugs, and all of these factors feed back to make us feel worse, make us feel less able to cope, increasingly stimulate HPA axis as well as cause more chronic stress. Using omega-3s directly knocks out this various pathway at all different stages. I actually had a really lovely phased in diagram done on PowerPoint, but this software won't let me do it, so you just get it all at once, I'm afraid. So essentially, bring in omega-3s, directly downplay inflammation, switch off that inflammatory capacity, regulate natural inflammatory resolution, preventing unnecessary unwanted inflammation. Omega-3s also directly interact with our genetics to stimulate genes that help protect against oxidative stress, so protecting against that directly, reducing lipid peroxidation in the first place. But of course, by taking omega-3s, you'll be replenishing any damage to lipid membranes that occur. By reducing these, you're directly protecting against degradation and loss and reduced availability of neurotransmitters, protecting against that tiredness and fatigue associated with high oxidative stress, higher inflammation, and also helping to protect against immune suppression. So by protecting against these steps, you're reducing that positive feedback that would trigger more chronic stress, and omega-3s can actually directly switch off and reduce this chronic stress perception and increased HPA axis overstimulation. Similar story then when it comes to vitamin C and B. Vitamin C, we know, is directly involved in cortisol production. Having optimal vitamin C levels can help prevent excess cortisol from being produced, preventing that negative feedback and causing more chronic stress, causing that immune suppression, because of course when you have persistently high cortisol, after a while its natural anti-inflammatory mechanisms essentially get brushed aside, and the high inflammatory signals being produced cause immune suppression, and we start to get sick. B vitamins directly involved in reducing inflammation, as well as both B and C protecting us against oxidative stress via recycling antioxidant pools, being antioxidants themselves, and being involved in glutathione and detoxification. So really, 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 really important to be sort of aware of this negative feedback. We're not just saying take some vitamin C, get rid of cortisol, the end. It's this cascade effect, and everything triggers back and switches more and more on. So vitamin C, B, and omegas are really important for actually preventing this chronic stress from having the detrimental effects it's known to have. We cannot think about stress without thinking about the HPA axis. And of course, we know that cortisol is produced by the adrenal glands. When we've got this constant feedback of stress, more cortisol, then the adrenal glands are going to get exhausted. That causes tiredness, fatigue, our metabolism gets all upset. And so we need to be supporting the adrenal function in order to be able to regulate stress. But something we also need to be aware of, and I'm sure most of you already are, is the impact that this often has on the thyroid. So many of my clients, and I'm sure many of yours as well, are presenting with subclinical hypothyroidism because they've just been chronically stressed, anxious, overwhelmed for God knows how many years. Their thyroid is trying to give up, and it's struggling to keep up with the demands of the repair and the metabolic drive associated with needing to keep up with this high level of stress. So selenium, obviously really important in nourishing and protecting the thyroid there. We've talked about magnesium briefly, but specifically in anxiety and depression, there's been some really lovely research, and magnesium is very, very well established as an anti-anxiety nutrient. So it's something to definitely consider when looking to support anxiety and stress. And we know from studies that a minimum of sort of 300 milligrams of magnesium is the way to go when it comes to supporting stress and anxiety. Stress and anxiety wise, there's not a huge amount of sort of major hero nutrients out there. There's nothing that anybody's singing and dancing about above and beyond those standard sort of housekeeping vitamins, minerals, and omegas. L-theanine seems to be the major one that's most well documented, has the most research. We know it's that lovely agent in tea that makes us go, ah, life is okay, I can cope with this. And theanine is really a lovely nutrient. It's a natural amino acid, but we don't actually commonly consume it in our diets. And it's involved again in the production and function of the key neurotransmitters that make us feel calm, relaxed, happy, give us motivation, and allow us to sort of carry out our day to day without getting overwhelmed and allowing that central nervous system stimulation to get out of control. Another really important mechanism of L-theanine is it's a natural vasodilator. So that in itself is beneficial in terms of anxiety because it will allow increased oxygen delivery to the brain and the mitochondria, and just the process of vasodilation helps with a sense of relaxation and calm. I wanted to talk very briefly here about herbals. We are not a herbal specialist company, and for that reason, we've not put any herbal ingredients in our MindCare range. But herbals seem to be a really wonderful area that does have significant benefits. So if you are looking to support somebody with considerable stress and anxiety disorders, then this is definitely something to go down the route of. Ashwagandha being the most thoroughly stress and anxiety based herbal that's been researched. There's been some really lovely studies published using ashwagandha showing really quite potent and significant benefits to anxiety and stressed people, and the subsequent negative effects of stress, such as reducing high cortisol and preventing immunosuppression. You've got valerian root as well, and rhodiola, and both of those have been researched a little bit, but not dramatically. But also worth considering in people with particular stress and anxiety issues. So moving on then quickly to focus, attention and cognitive performance. Now this is an area that perhaps unsurprisingly has had a lot of attention, but is also unsurprisingly quite contentious. Who are we to say that an already healthy, active brain is going to be more focused, attentive, and able to perform better in terms of cognitive function just by giving loads of nutrients? Of course, yes, the area of this sort of area of research has been based on enhancing cognitive performance, focus, and attention in people who it's not already optimal, but certainly in the research I've been following recently, there's a lot of brain biohacking going on, which is all very exciting stuff, but there's probably a reason why the benefits are sort of a little bit skewed and a little bit confusing. We do know from looking at ADHD and autism that there's quite a lot that can be done for cognitive performance, attention and focus in terms of nutrition. So we can tap into those areas and try to utilize some of them for a general sort of performance boost. So again, omega-3s are really important, but they have been very mixed and varied in terms of the studies. There's been a couple of reviews published over the last few years that basically have shown that whilst we know on the whole omegas are great for supplying oxygen to the brain, delivering fuel, helping with neurotransmitter functions, memory, learning, etc., giving omega-3s to just any old Joe isn't necessarily going to result in them suddenly becoming Einstein. Of course not. We don't all have the biological and the cognitive capacity to be Einstein, despite how many omegas and B-vits we're feeding to people. One really important thing when it comes to cognitive performance in omega-3s is looking at populations, again, that actually need these nutrients. So most of the studies that have shown benefits with omega-3 use in cognitive function have been in populations with an already compromised omega-3 intake. And it's not really surprising. Like, as I say, with so many nutrients, and as I'm sure you're well aware, optimizing a nutrient status that's already optimal isn't necessarily going to provide additional benefits. And in some cases, it can actually be quite detrimental. So this was another one of those reviews. This was carried out just last year. And again, as with so many of these reviews, it kind of said, yeah, we know they're good. We know they're quite helpful, but there's not really anything significant coming out of here. We don't really know what recommendations to make off the back of this study. Omega-3s are great, but we don't know how much, what, when, why, and who for. So what I actually did, I was feeling a little bit pedantic at the time and going, oh, no, surely there must be something positive we can take away from these studies. So I sat down with my highlighter pen and a red pen on the side to scribble down notes, and I unpicked every single study that this review looked at, and I came up with a few of my own conclusions. So what I've discovered from looking at brain health and obviously focusing on omega-3s is that it really is all about finding the right piece of the puzzle according to what specifically you're hoping to achieve, who specifically you're working with, and making sure that you're actually seeing benefits. So just taking every omega-3 study that's ever been done and hoping that you're going to see the same overall benefits in terms of cognitive performance is just not going to happen. So finding, like I say, that right piece of the puzzle that just slots in, gives you what it is you're looking for, is really, really important. And from that review, that one, these were the pieces of the puzzle that I unpicked. So firstly, we know that DHA, yes, is absolutely fundamental to memory and learning. With low DHA status, both our memory and our ability to learn new things, and even our memory recall, is reduced. So if we're looking specifically to optimize those areas, then it's DHA that we need to be focusing on. But we are only going to see benefits to memory and learning if the population we're looking at has low DHA levels and low DHA intake in the first place. As I sort of touched upon earlier, and as you can see in this box here, when we're looking specifically to enhance cognitive performance, we're looking for speed of processing, we're looking for the ability to stay focused without distraction, then we need to be giving significant EPA in excess of DHA to be seeing benefits. All the studies in this review that actually produced any kind of positive benefit gave over 400 milligrams per day in terms of dose. Bearing in mind a lot of the people that are reading the papers, seeing these detrimental cognitive decline isn't helped by omegas, cognitive performance isn't helped by omegas, are probably taking their one a day cod liver oil. They're getting less than 330 milligrams of total omega-3. So we already know that they're probably not going to be experiencing the benefits that should be experienced from optimizing omega-3 levels. So dose is really, really, really vital. A minimum of 400 milligrams of total omega-3 was required. The length of intervention, again, it sort of goes without saying. We know that it takes a while for omegas to be absorbed and incorporated into the cells, and an absolute minimum of a month is needed for those omegas to reach the brain and be used and have any kind of cognitive enhancement benefits. This was a little bit scary, but it happens with all sorts of nutrients. We see it with lots of different study areas. Too much of any one nutrient can also be slightly detrimental, and this is the case with DHA. There's been a wealth of papers released over the last year or so showing that with DHA specifically, it can actually have a negative impact on structure of the cell membrane, which can affect receptors and neurotransmission, affect ion channels, and actually signals to the rest of the omega-3 pathway, well, I must be replete because I've got loads of DHA, so I don't need to be producing so much of the other omegas, which can have downstream detrimental effects. So it's just something to be cautious of with using DHA, that like with many nutrients, we don't want to go too far with DHA. And many of the benefits associated with DHA will strictly put down to blood flow. So just by increasing circulation, get people to do 10-star jumps every 35 minutes if they're studying, for example, we can help to increase brain performance, which sort of goes without saying. So moving on then from omegas and on from this cognitive puzzle that we need to really be thinking about, we've obviously got zinc. Again, zinc is absolutely essential for cognitive processing, and you can see there the involvement of zinc in every single neurotransmitter and enzyme conversion from the amino acids through to the neurotransmitters, and of course therefore optimal levels of zinc are going to be impacting all of our functions, our attention, our focus, our cognitive processing. And zinc has been directly linked to a number of issues relating to cognitive decline, as well as mood and mental health disorders. So really important to make sure that zinc levels are fully optimized. Moving on then to some of the more sort of exciting nutrients associated with cognitive performance, we've got acetyl L-carnitine, and this is obviously a fat transporter, and its real benefit is in making sure that the mitochondria have a sustainable source of fuel for prolonged periods of time. But really interestingly, and although this study was done in mice, it's sort of starting to filter down into human studies. There's been some really lovely research showing that the use of acetyl L-carnitine not only alters glucose metabolism in the mitochondria, but also enhances the availability and action of our neurotransmitters. So it directly supports memory and cognitive function, above and beyond just being that transporter mechanism for prolonged sustainable fuel source for the mitochondria. So very, very exciting. I took my acetyl L-carnitine this morning, so hopefully my brain's going to be with me for a little while yet. Combination of L-theanine and caffeine, also really, really potent in terms of cognitive performance benefits. Again, an area that's been quite well researched. Lots of interesting stuff coming out. The combination of the sort of calming, relaxing, and it's switching off the back chat of the brain is what L-theanine is best at doing. It prevents this distractibility, this constant sort of mental flitting around. Combining that benefit with the enhanced mental perception of energy and the stimulatory benefits of caffeine, you get this really, really lovely, like potent fine tuning of your cognitive processes, memory recall. You're able to concentrate and focus for prolonged periods of time. And there's been some really nice stuff, as you can see here, that's actually shown like sustained attention and increased cognitive performance during demanding tasks with this combination ingredients. Finally, then, taurine in the focus and attention area has had a lot of attention, largely thanks to the production of Red Bull. But taurine is a sort of not quite amino acid. It's an aminosulfonic acid, and it acts via lots of really, really lovely mechanisms. And I'd advise you, if you get a chance, to sort of go off and have a look at this paper, because it's really quite fascinating, all of the different mechanisms that taurine's involved within the central nervous system. It is involved in membrane stabilization, so we can actually utilize those transmembrane proteins. Cellular communication is effective and enhanced and supported. It's involved in lots of antioxidants, but it's also heavily involved in our glutaminergic transporter pathways, so involved in glutamine receptors and all of those pathways associated with neurotransmission, and getting us sort of like focused and alert and switched on and ready for action. So it's a very exciting nutrient. And as I mentioned, Those were a couple of studies that were actually done directly on Red Bull itself, looking at the combination of caffeine and taurine and the other ingredients in Red Bull, and found that it can have significant positive effects on mental performance as well as mood. Things like reaction times have been improved and general sort of attention performance as a result of the caffeine and taurine blend. So it's pretty well researched, this combination. So again, going back to this whole concept with MindCare, it's really about the blend. It's about the synergy. And what we wanted to do with MindCare is make sure that we weren't just saying, here you go, here's a couple of magic bullet ingredients. We really wanted to think about the full package, the full spectrum, and make sure that every single biological process that occurs with the brain and the central nervous system that needs supporting, that needs enhancing, is with the nutrient profile that we provide. And then we add in a few of these exciting key active ingredients that just go one step further and give the brain that little boost. I'm going to whiz through mood balance because this is an area of Igennus speciality, and we've talked about it millions and millions of times in the past. So please feel free to look up our previous webinars, and we will talk about it again. But of course, omegas. We know from intense research their involvement in neurotransmitter function, but inflammation directly associated with EPA is absolutely vital for mood and mood regulation. EPA levels being low, inflammation levels being high. This directly translates to reduced availability of serotonin and significant inflammatory based depression. So this is a couple of meta-analyses that were carried out, and both of them just very clearly show that supplementing with an omega that is predominantly EPA is significantly favorable versus placebo, much more so than a low EPA or high DHA supplement. So I will be sending these slides around so you can have a look at these in a little bit more depth. And any of the references, I've tried to put PubMed links in these slides where possible, but any references that you can't get hold of then and you're interested in, let me know and I'll try and ping them across to you. Vitamin D, again, really, really, really important. We know that seasonal affective disorder is a huge thing. A lot of it is to do with spending time outside, general sort of mood benefits of the light wavelength hitting your skin and your retina. But vitamin D is massively involved in our mood stabilization, and low levels are directly linked to anxiety and depression. And again, this was a really nice review that sort of tried to unpick the flaws in vitamin D research. And this gentleman, Simon Spedding, found that basically in those studies that actually used the right population, gave the right kind of vitamin D, gave enough to actually raise vitamin D plasma levels, then vitamin D was statistically significantly beneficial for depression and actually comparable to antidepressants, which I think is incredible. BVITs, again, involved in inflammation, dopamine synthesis, really important role of B7 in blood sugar stabilization, and also obviously that involvement of B12 folate and B6 in homocysteine recycling, production of S-adenosyl methionine, directly linked to positive affect, which I thought was lovely, and that's not a typo. Positive affect, for those of you that don't know, is actually the extent to which an individual can subjectively experience positive mood, joy, shows interest in things, and feels alert and engaged. So some nice studies there directly showing how the BVITs are involved in this positive mood state. And also just to make you aware that in the presence of high inflammation and low B vitamin 6 status, tryptophan can actually be shuttled down a different pathway. So it doesn't always automatically convert into 5-HTP. It can go down this kynurenine pathway, which results in lots of sort of potentially neurotoxic chemicals being produced and a reduced tryptophan 5-HTP conversion. So B6 is also important for optimizing tryptophan and 5-HTP. Magnesium, again, largely to do with its anti-anxiety benefits, but low magnesium status is actually very recently, in this lovely study that was published using the National Health Statistics study that was done, and basically found that low magnesium status directly correlated with depression. So it's really important to be making sure that your client's magnesium status is optimized if depression is a concern. 5-HTP, of course, again, a little bit contentious. We know that biologically, mechanistically, 5-HTP, absolutely wonderful in terms of boosting both serotonin and melatonin. It bypasses that first conversion step of turning tryptophan into 5-HTP, so that you don't get tryptophan being used for the production of niacin or in protein synthesis, for example, but actually make sure that it's all converted directly into serotonin. Frustratingly, there haven't actually been a huge number of positive studies looking directly at 5-HTP. Quite a lot done on St. John's wort, and we know the active ingredient in St. John's wort is obviously 5-HTP. So it's sort of, again, mixed and varied. We know it works. Biologically, it works. Some people are sensitive, so just be aware of that. But in the MindCare products specifically, the 5-HTP dose is kept relatively low to make sure that none of that potential serotonin side effect is occurring. So finally then, and perhaps most excitingly at the moment, because of all of the research that's going on and all of the sort of support that the government are putting behind Alzheimer's, dementia, cognitive decline, we've got a really, really lovely area of research that again has its absolute heroes. The omega-3s are without doubt fundamental to protecting the brain as we age, reducing neuroinflammation, reducing oxidative stress, enhancing all of those processing mechanisms. But again, as with so many things, there have been so many studies being published that are really quite detrimental and useless. And I want you to just focus on this green box before you look at this. Again, when we drill down into the omega-3 cognitive studies, but even if you look at B vitamins, if you look at choline, for example, the studies are a little bit all over the place. Whilst we as nutritionists know it makes absolute scientific sense, that this is going to work and these are vital, we need to really be thinking about who we're studying, how much omega-3 we're giving them. Do they need omega-3s? Are they at risk of cognitive decline? You know, what's really going on here? How long should we be giving them omegas? Is it already too late for the omegas to really see a benefit? The study that I mentioned earlier that came out last week, they actually took wealthy, well-educated people who were not at risk of cognitive decline, and they gave them omega-3s without understanding really whether or not they needed any omega-3s, and expected to see a benefit to cognitive decline. When you looked at the results versus placebo, there wasn't really any major cognitive decline in either group. There was mild cognitive decline, just associated with normal aging and going from sort of being an average of 60, I think it was an average of 72 to obviously an average of 82. No, sorry, 72 to 77. On average. So they really weren't a population that were at risk and that were going to be benefiting from omega-3s. They needed to be thinking about a different population. So it was another one of these frustrating fishing studies, a bit like the prostate and omega-3 studies, where they basically weren't intending to ever look at omega-3s in prostate cancer, but decided just to throw that in as an afterthought anyway. So we do need to be really careful as practitioners, and actually rally against some of this. Get on your blogs, get on your Twitter feeds and post rebuttals and make people aware that this really isn't very good. The good thing about a lot of this is, which I pulled this study out, is that thankfully studies that show that supplementation doesn't make a difference is actually much less likely to have a negative impact on consumer behavior than studies that come out negative. So if this study had said omega-3s are detrimental, then the omega-3s would all be thrown in the bin. But thankfully, because the study sort of said, it's really not that beneficial, people are still happy to sort of chance it and take their luck with the supplement. So it's not all bad. But again, it really highlights this whole area of research where we need to be thinking about the benefit that a negative study can tell us. What is this negative study telling us? It's not just telling us that this is rubbish and we shouldn't do it. It's telling us how not to conduct future studies, and the fact that 5 years in a otherwise healthy and educated and brain healthy population is not going to be the right place to look for answers for cognitive decline support. B vitamins and homocysteine, again, we know that homocysteine is essential for cognitive decline. Homocysteine is one of the sort of main biomarkers being used for risk of cognitive decline, and it's a significant predictor of dementia and Alzheimer's, and largely because it increases oxidative stress, it increases direct damage to cell structures, but also obviously the B vitamins are very, very heavily involved in mitochondrial function and the detoxification process, which requires a lot more support as we age. So just to kind of hark back to this concept of we must be thinking about synergistic benefits and not isolated nutrients. This was actually a really nice study where they looked at the combination of omega-3s and B vitamins, and they said, whoa, hang on, wait a minute, you can't just expect to give everybody the same dose of everything and see a difference to their cognitive performance and their cognitive health. What we should do is take nutrients that are really known to interact and really known to be fundamental to cognitive performance and see if there's some kind of link between them. So they dosed with B vitamins, but they actually split the group into those with low, medium, and high omega-3 status. And you can see here, they looked at brain shrinkage. Those with a low omega-3 status to begin with did not see any benefit with taking B vitamins, but those with even a medium and in particular a high omega-3 status at baseline, there was a significant benefit to using B vitamins in terms of reducing the rate of brain atrophy as the population aged. So really, 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 really fundamental, as I say, to make sure that you're thinking about the various different interactions in order to make sure that brain health and cognitive performance in particular are supported adequately. Hero nutrients then, I'm very happy to say there are a few very exciting research projects going on at the moment looking at all sorts of different nutrients in cognitive decline. N-acetyl L-cysteine, obviously a really, really lovely nutrient for supporting detoxification, boosting liver phase 1 and 2, and making sure that we are protecting that high antioxidant requirement associated with aging through glutathione, etc. So direct interaction here as well with the dopamine release, the glutaminergic pathways again. So we're getting some neurotransmitter modulation. So it's not all just about detoxification and antioxidant support, direct anti-inflammatory mechanisms, as well as that oxidative stress support. And these three different branches of the sort of benefits of N-acetyl L-cysteine can actually help to stimulate growth and differentiation of our neurons, which is really exciting. So very important for making sure that the brain is nourished and protected and functioning efficiently as we age. We then got the lovely alpha lipoic acid, which again, a potent antioxidant, but it also being a fatty acid helps stabilize mitochondrial membranes specifically, as well as clear up any protein and toxicity buildups through its metal chelation activities. And there have been some early studies, a lot of them in animal models, but some now in humans, showing that the use of alpha lipoic acid can actually help improve some early signs of age-related cognitive decline. So it can actually help to reverse things slightly. And that's just one of those studies where they looked at alpha lipoic acid therapy in cognitive function in those with Alzheimer's disease, and they found that on the whole, cognitive performance improved and Alzheimer's markers were reduced. Quite exciting. And we can't talk about the brain and we can't talk about aging without talking about resveratrol, a delicious, dare I say it, nutrient from obviously red grape skins, supporting mitochondrial function and directly interacting with these sirtuin enzymes and making sure that the aging process is again protected and supported and nourished and slowed down as much as possible. If you guys follow Miguel at all, he's our aging expert. He'll tell you all about resveratrol and sirtuins and their importance in preventing the rate at which we see age-related decline in all various different functions. So really, really lovely stuff, as I say, coming out for resveratrol in Alzheimer's disease and cognitive decline directly. Again, a couple of herbals just to be aware of. Ginkgo. Studies have found that it does produce quite a notable benefit to cognitive decline. So I would strongly suggest, if this is the area that you're targeting with clients, that you definitely think about getting some ginkgo, good quality ginkgo into their regime. Ginseng as well, there's been some mild cognitive enhancement benefits seen in certain studies, whereas, please excuse me if I say this wrong, Bacopa monnieri, I hope that's right. Really lovely studies here. 4 to 6 weeks of his use have been found to quite dramatically increase cognition as well as improve symptoms of cognitive decline. So that's amazing. And I should certainly be buying some for my aunt who's just been diagnosed with dementia, which is very sad. So, in addition to all of these wonderful things, there's a few other things that I didn't have time to cover that are obviously not possible to put into a capsule, but we will go into more detail on these things when we do the specific webinars. So many things you can think about when you're thinking about brain health and optimizing brain health. First and foremost, I haven't once mentioned the gut and probiotics, but this is absolutely fundamental. The brain-gut link, the role of our gut flora, our microbiota in brain performance, attention, mood, cognitive health. So fundamental, and something to absolutely be focusing on when you're addressing any kind of mental health or brain performance related disorder. Blueberries, anthocyanins are really up and coming in terms of the research and their support for cognitive performance and brain, something that unfortunately we can't sell a tub of blueberries with every tub of MindCare as much as I'd love to, but something definitely to increase in the diet and just generally boosting antioxidants through the diet, getting your methylators and your betaine and things to support homocysteine again, support blood flow with your beetroot juice there, enhancing oxygen delivery to the brain. Your green tea for your L-theanine, but also your catechins, absolutely vital for the brain. Curcumin coming out as a really sort of unsung hero for antidepressant activity, anti-inflammatories, and generally protecting the brain as we age. But obviously make sure that it is a bioavailable form. It needs to be optimized, such as with black pepper extract and things like that. Fats, we know they're fundamental, getting fats into the diet as much as possible. And of course, things like choline, lutein, getting loads of eggs in the diet. Diet on the whole is one of the better researched areas and the areas that come out with a lot more positive benefits for brain health. And again, perhaps going back to this concept of the synergistic benefits for the brain, the MIND diet, for example, Mediterranean diet, Ketogenic diets, intermittent fasting, all been shown to be absolutely wonderful for mental health and cognition. So definitely something to look into if you're using dietary methods specifically to address brain health. But don't forget lifestyle and well-being as well. And again, this is part of the reason why perhaps cognitive studies are so difficult, because we cannot necessarily determine how much time people are spending outdoors in green space. Are they dealing with their stress if stress is an issue? Are they sleeping well? Are they keeping their brains active? Are they keeping active in general? So many factors that we know, much more so than individual nutrients, actually directly contribute to healthy cognitive function. So that is the MindCare range. That's sort of the main ingredients involved in MindCare, the thinking behind MindCare, the 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 research that's available that we've based MindCare on, all of the references that we've used to formulate MindCare, together with lots of extras, have been put into this presentation. But we really felt that the supplements that we've put together deliver this comprehensive synergistic support, nourish, protect, preserve, as well as enhance the areas of brain nutrition that each product is specifically aimed to target. So just really quickly, in case you haven't guessed already, if you do decide to use MindCare with any of your clients, it's a duo formulation. You get a 1-a-day fish oil. It's an 80% concentration EPA plus DHA, providing you with 660 milligrams omega-3, of which 250 DHA, 410 EPA. You get 1,000 IU of vitamin D in there as well, and you get lovely antioxidant vitamin E to protect the oil and boost brain antioxidant status. Then the 4 products have their own unique micronutrient status. The shared ingredients in the micronutrients are the ones we discussed early on and throughout the presentation. You've got your full B vitamin complex, including methylcobalamin, P5P, and methyl tetrahydrofolate. You've got zinc, selenium, vitamin C in all of those in their most bioavailable, active, and specifically central nervous system nourishing nutrients forms. Then, according to the area of health that we're targeting, you've got the key actives that are most heavily researched, most well established, and are known to provide synergistic benefits when combined with one another. So magnesium and L-theanine in MindCare Balance to specifically target and reduce anxiety and stress. Acetyl L-carnitine, L-theanine, taurine, and caffeine in Focus to really take advantage of those sort of brain biohacking mechanisms and making sure that we are, where possible, supercharging the brain when it is needed to be supercharged. Magnesium and 5-HTP in Lift, just to boost mood enough to help people stay on top of things and not really go down that full-blown depression route. And then finally, MindCare Protect, which is our potent antioxidant blend with those added benefits of the evidence of actual reversing and cognitive protection. So those slides are just for information, just to let you know that it's all EFSA approved, highly thought out and researched, and the best quality, most bioavailable and active forms of all of the nutrients. And the formulations were really carefully thought out. We really wanted to provide something that was going to make a significant difference. It can be used as a baseline intervention with your clients. Because you're getting such a comprehensive and very good quality nutrient profile, you can, without having to flood somebody with 19 different supplements just to give them that absolutely essential support, you can give them a MindCare product, and then you've still got space to be looking at other options, whether it's herbals, whether it's probiotics, whether you need to do antibacterial programs, all sorts of things still available, because you're getting most of what you need in the one box at a reasonable price with MindCare. So as I said, there have been a lot of references and research put into formulating MindCare. I've added more into the slides as I went along, and our new research has come out since we launched MindCare last year. But any references you do want to read, please have a look or let us know, and we are always here to help. We're very, very happy to discuss this over the phone with you guys, come to local practitioner groups and give talks about this or other supplements or just general nutrition and nutrition science. So please get in touch. Hopefully it was a relatively straightforward talk. My apologies that it was quite a long one. There was a lot to cover. If you do have any questions, the best thing to do would probably be to email me directly. You can either get me at sophiet@igennus.com, which I'm just typing in the chat box now. Alternatively, you can get me at education@igennus. I can type education@igennus.com. Either way, I will respond to you. Please, as I say, feel free to ask anything you like. If you want to get some point of sale for your clinics or anything like that, we do have all of that available. So thank you very, very much for your extended time on this morning, this lovely morning, although it has been raining here in Cambridge, so it's not so lovely. Thank you very, very much. Go and enjoy some lunch, and please, please, please get in touch if you need us. The slides and the recording will be emailed around later in the week, so you can catch up on anything you missed. Take care. Have a lovely day. Bye.